Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Wells of Wall Street. We've got an XDC video here for you today. Before we do that, do go check out the other videos after watching this one, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already. Welcome to new subscribers and existing ones all around the world. Absolutely awesome to have you here as always. Let's go straight into this first topic. XDC staking now available on Bitrue, 4% APY with a 30-day lock-in. There is a flexible one here for less APY as well, but this is probably why you've seen a bit of an uptake of XDC's price point over the last few days. We'll go into a bit more detail about that when we go into the chart, but this is of course always something nice and rewarding in a bear market or a winter market or any time really, for letting the money do the work for you, as they say. Staking principal, basically accumulating your XDC onto Bitrue and taking advantage of the staking application here. So this is a very interesting move. Of course, Bitrue are always doing things like trading competitions, staking pools and stuff like this. So really cool to see an XDC one. But yeah, as I said, that's probably one of the main reasons why we've seen a bit of an uptake in price. We will go into that in more detail shortly. On to the nitty gritty topics here. So Atul from the XDC Foundation, or XinFin, banks will be able to hold 2% of the reserves in tokenized form. XDC network is one of the most optimum layer 1 blockchain infrastructures available for tokenization. Come and join us on the journey with us. Now, they're not suggesting particularly that they're involved in this kind of aspect here, but let's go into more detail. So this is based around the implementation by January 2025 on something that's called the Basel Committee. They do basically infrastructures and standardizations for a multitude of things within finance, okay? And one in particular, which was the framework called Basel 3, or I don't know whether they call it Basel 3 or Basel the 3rd, I don't know. It's not the king or anything. So Basel 3 framework, this is actually something that was quite old now, maybe well over a decade, maybe even older, I'm not sure. But certainly been around for some time in the grand principles of finance and introducing new structure and new standardizations behind this. And in particular, this conversation around the exposure and utilization of crypto assets, but more importantly, this topic here about tokenization of assets. We'll go on to a really interesting topic in a second around gold, which is interesting. But tokenization, we're seeing a lot more of. We did a video, I think it was a couple of weeks ago or maybe in a week ago, around tokenization. We've always talked about things like how I'm trying to move away really from like NFT wording. I think that puts a lot of people off, but the tokenization aspect is basically around anything and everything: housing, cars, everything you buy, everything you sell being potentially tokenized. And we covered a really cool partnership, I believe it was through the XRP Ledger, XRPL partnership, where, or LCX, I have to remind myself, but it was very much around a company utilizing a tokenized platform, being able to buy something physically and turn that into a tokenized asset, where you could either share that and invest collectively, or you can sell a share of it but still kind of have it physically. It's a bit of a whirlwind there, and a few questions still to be answered in my opinion. But what we're seeing now is all the big financial institutions out there talking more and more about tokenization, and that can be very much applied to currency, crypto assets in general, and also things like physical aspects like gold and silver. We'll touch on that more in detail in a second. GHOS, so this is very related to the group of central bank governors and heads of supervision, GHOS. So just get used to that abbreviation. I'm not going to say that whole long list every time. But yeah, they very much put together this massive kind of standardization and framework. I've got halfway through this. I'm not going to lie and say I've read the whole thing. And I'm certainly not going to lie and say I have no idea what half of this means, to be honest. If someone knows maths or equations, or maybe even this is algebra and science, I'm not quite sure. It takes me back to a time where I didn't know what was going on in class. That makes no sense to me. So if anyone out there knows these calculations and things, please do let me know. But the general principle is a mechanism and a framework here based around not just the tokenization of assets, but this is interesting, the structure of the standard, and actually towards crypto assets themselves. So the structure of the standard is unchanged from the proposal set out in the second consultation. This was some time ago. I think this is the most recent up-to-date one, right? And they're basically trying to classify crypto assets into various groups. Now, this is very interesting because if we think about like Ripple, XRP in particular, with the SEC right now, and they always talk about securities or whatever terminology. It's different terminology in different countries, right? And with Ripple XRP's case, the SEC is the only pretty much the governing body in America for finance, etc., and securities that is holding it back. Everywhere around the world is absolutely fine with it. However, that's not to say that other countries may follow suit with some other principles and application of this and criteriaing what this kind of asset is. Now, this is very basic information here, okay? I'm sure they're going to define this in more detail as time goes by. But look at this. Group 1 crypto assets, those that meet in full a set of classification conditions. Now, the word classification stands out to me because this is the principle and the similar sort of wording that is classifying securities in other countries, particularly in America. We'll talk about as in a prime example. Conditions, so classification conditions. Group 1 crypto assets include tokenized traditional assets and crypto assets with effective stabilization mechanisms. Group 1 crypto assets are subject to capital requirements based on the risk weight of underlying exposures as set out in existing Basel framework. So this Basel framework, I might do a video on it actually. It's very, very interesting indeed, I have to say. But this other point, Group 2 crypto assets, those that fail to meet any of the classification conditions. As a result, they pose additional and higher risks compared with Group 1 crypto assets and consequently are subject to a newly prescribed conservative capital treatment. In addition to any tokenized traditional assets and stable coins, very interesting, that fail the classification conditions, Group 2 includes all unbacked crypto assets. A set of hedging, this is very much around actual investments and hedging aspects. A set of hedging recognition criteria is used to identify those Group 2 crypto assets where a limited degree of hedging is permitted to be recognized, Group 2A, and those where hedging is not recognized, Group 2B. Really weird, guys. Like, this is very interesting stuff. This is very much a side to what's going on with the new RTGS system, the new SWIFT replacement that is by November 2025. And it's very much in relation to where we're going with digital assets. And now it's very interesting also to see that banks and the institutions above them, the standard bodies, particularly here in BIS as an example, are creating frameworks for this and actually slowly but surely integrating crypto assets and tokenization into the existing financial framework here in the UK. Okay, BIS does cover, of course, many other applications around the world. But I'm talking about the UK in particular here because this is something that's really heavily regarded to what we've been speaking about in previous videos, that, you know, the Bank of England is searching for a company or an institution that can come in and build the CBDC framework. And it's very interesting here where they're talking about like January 2025 as implementation, a few months before the new RTGS system. But we know as well with the litigation of the CBDC framework that's being built here for the Bank of England, that this all fits into 2025. This is why I would say that we're running out of time here. So here we go. Group 2 exposure limit. A bank's total exposure to Group 2 crypto assets must not exceed 2% of the bank's Tier 1 capital and should generally be lower than 1%. Banks breaching the 1% limit will apply the more conservative Group 2 capital. This is very much just application of like what will happen if this happens, and if this doesn't happen, what happens. But I'm very interested to see stablecoins being introduced into this as well. And of course, that's a digital application. And I guess you could call it tokenization as well. And this is like I said, it's fitting very nicely in the CBDC framework, the conversation around that peg value crypto assets. So we're talking about stable coins here. I would honestly just have a read through this. I'm going to drop this link into the description below and into the comments as well if you want to have a read through it. Honestly, I'm not even like, I'm on like page 6 still. I've just got to this point. And I'm very interested to read these next parts here about the risk testing, certainly about the regulation. And as I said, just because the SEC is doing XRP doesn't mean when we're going through this whole consultation period about regulation and who's identified as classified to go forwards or not as a crypto asset or as a tokenized asset, this is still to come, guys. This is why I'm very particular with what I invest in from now on. about their compliance, about their strategy behind the regulation, who they're working with, who they're networked with. Because initially, many crypto assets out there will disappear. There's no doubt about it. Over the next couple of years, they'll just fall apart. Whether they don't meet certain criteria, or they're just not, the utility was not, that they promised was not being used, or indeed integrated as they thought it would be. So this is going to be very interesting next year or so, in my opinion. We see a lot more topics, a lot more ruthlessness about regulation and standardization. There's been a lot of talk over many years about, crypto assets need to be looked at, blah, blah, blah. And then it's all part of the market fluctuation and manipulation, in my opinion, most of the time. But now I think there's a really defined, serious nature towards this. And I think it has to be, obviously, especially if we're integrating things into existing finance systems, and has to be obviously regulated and to a level that appreciates towards things like here in the UK, the FCA and CFA and all those other ones, all those governing bodies around the world for finance. So very interesting. Last quick point, tokenization. The record central bank gold rush triggered by fears of Western sanctions. Now, whatever you want to believe about the sanctions and this, that, and the other, my point being is that central banks worldwide are accumulating gold like mad. The most since 1967. Okay, so there is big conversations out here at the moment, and I was reading through some of the XinFin aspects here, and they did actually mention, very interestingly, a topic around gold. Tokenization of gold might be the biggest use case in blockchain right now, as central banks keep stockpiling gold. XDC network is ready. Are you? I love these comments that XDC members, particularly here at all, is throwing out here. It's almost like teasers to say, yeah, we know what we're doing. We're doing things in the background. Get ready. Because I think this is absolutely phenomenal to see these kind of moves. Almost 400 tons of gold were bought by central banks in the third quarter, quadruple the amount acquired in the same period a year earlier. Absolutely mental. So snapped up more gold in the first 9 months of 2022 than all the annual totals since 1967. Tokenization of gold. Going back to that point about that company, I need to remind myself who it was, but the company of tokenizing physical assets. This can be applied to finance. And what assets, what infrastructure is going to be in place in the background to coordinate this, to be the infrastructure, to be the solution. And I truly believe XDC is definitely one of them. You could argue that there's 10 that you could count on 10 fingers or thumbs or whatever that are probably the most secure assets you could invest in, particularly related to finance and what's going on in the world here. The messages are here, guys. They're being thrown in our face. It's a question of finding them, researching them, understanding them, and seeing what's going on, who's investing, who's doing this, who's doing that. So keep an eye out for this, guys. It's all piecing together. The reason I'm pulling these two topics together, it's all relating to the same conversation about tokenization of assets. Think about it. The new frameworks, the new integrations, absolutely phenomenal. We're talking about giant amounts of money and value here, and who's going to be powering it all? Who's going to do the CBDC infrastructure for the UK here? Who's going to do it in other countries and worldwide dominance, or the integration of that? Interoperability, we know Quant is heavy on that. It's exciting stuff, really. But yeah, let's jump into the chart, guys. Again, don't forget this 4% APY on Bitrue. So as you can see, we are currently floating around 2.8 cents. We've had this big uptake. As I said, it's mainly down to the staking application from Bitrue. I do anticipate us to drop back down to these levels at some point in the next week or two, around the lower regions of 2 cents. That's not trying to dampen down the excitement of XDC. You see today just about a small intake so far. It's not really pushing that boundary of 2.8 cents. It's almost like it's not quite ready. I mean, we might get another influx with people recognizing that XDC is available in the staking, and that might take it up a bit further. But we're already seeing the RSI at 72 on the 14-day and 58 on the 28-day. So this is sort of showing the higher regions, in my opinion, and that's why I'm not buying right now. Just waiting for the lower regions. I've still got my buy order back down here at the 1 cent level. People call me crazy, but that is just based on historic data. Support and resistance levels, in my opinion, aren't confirmed fully in this big, massive region here. But, of course, we do get the buy orders that we got the other day at the 2 cent region. very much in line with the previous video. We said we would be coming down to these regions. In my honest opinion, I think this is going to be a big area to consider over the coming months, maybe even the year ahead. We'll have to see. But XDC is an absolute powerhouse. It's going to have a huge future. People always ask me for price predictions. I'm not going to give a proper one until I see the full bottom out of XDC. But I would anticipate XDC based on CBDC integration, based on the fact that we've got the infrastructure of their hybrid solution and the way that the financial infrastructure around the world is concluding itself over the next couple of years. XDC, in my opinion, should be at least a few dollars by 2025. But as I said, I'm not going to give an intricate detail of that until we see the bottom. I need to get proper data on that, and I can't really obtain that until we know where we are. So that's kind of where I anticipate it to be coming. But in general, if you look at the performance indicators on the right hand side here, 64% negative on the year still. So it shows great room for growth to get to the break-even point and then accelerate beyond that, which can be absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to pay too much attention to the week and the month. They are generally going to be up because of the intake of the last week or so. But in general, over the 3-month period, it's still in positivity. I think it was negative actually a week ago, but the grand scheme of things is that it's pulling itself to be a bit more stable than a lot of the other assets out there. But to conclude what I just said a minute ago, we're seeing a bit of a barrier here at 2.8 cents, so it can't quite penetrate the 3 cent mark, which is a bit slightly higher than that. So I do anticipate a bit of a further wave down. And in fact, if you were to look at, for example, more of a macro level, you'll probably see this coming down in various stages, of course. But I do anticipate, as I said, for XDC to stabilize. As I said, the excitement of staking reducing and coming down to those areas. What happens in 30 days time when it finishes will remain to be seen. Do people sell off the money that they've made? Who knows? You've got to be aware of those kind of things. So I do have my buy orders at these manual positions still at the lower region of 2 cents and still have my mega order back here down at the 1 cent region. Let us know what you're doing in the comments below regarding XDC. But as I said just a moment ago, the RSIs are showing quite top heavy. It's not a position for me right now to jump in and get excited. I've already accumulated a lot of XDC. I mean, if you're jumping in for the first time of XDC and you just want to get involved in the staking, of course, I understand that principle. Just be aware of the moves that have already occurred in the last week in anticipation of that and what might be happening over the next few days. You don't want to sting yourself and then like buy loads of XDC right now, put it in a staking pool, but then it drops down significantly and all that money that you made in the staking pool may not be valued as high as it could have been, if that makes sense. So just be do a bit of risk assessments, think about it more logically. I can't advise on what to do and not to do. Just all I can do is really throw out the pros and cons of each thing and what I'm doing personally. So personally, I'm not staking XDC myself. I'm just holding it. It's not something I'm interested right now. If there was a long-term one, like a 12-month one, I probably would, but I'm not really interested in these 30-day operatives, time and management and things like that. It's not for me right now. But yeah, if there's a longer one, I probably would do it, maybe even if it was a 90-day one. But yeah, BitTrue do a lot of trading competitions and staking pools, so you never know. Keep an eye on that. It's a good exchange, good platform. The team are really good there. It's one of the nicer exchanges that I've used. But again, most of my assets are off exchanges anyway. So let's think about this in general for XDC over the coming weeks. I do think this pattern will bring us back down. But for me, it's a long-term hold. I'm not selling XDC at all for a long time until I see significant returns, especially from these lower positions that we have. If we pull it back out, this is our target for the next big rule run, 20 cents as a minimum. And I do think we could shatter that quite significantly. And we look at the top levels of the fib retracement charts, just from the bottom and the top levels that we do have data for, that's taken us to around 80 cents. So we could see that over the next year or two if things go well. But I do anticipate big mass adoption and big mass audiences coming in over the next few years as we relate to those 2025 eras. We just talked a lot about the frameworks, the standardizations, tokenization. More and more people will hear about XDC. There's no doubt about it. And I think this is going to be an exciting time as an investor to look back at these crazy prices we're at now, even if it's 1 cent or 3 cents, to accumulate as much as we can at these lower regions. And even if it got to 20 cents and just stopped there, wow, what an uptake that would have been from these current low points. In fact, just to reiterate, around about this 2.8 cent mark, up to that point there, is quite significant, actually. I'll just drop it just above where it is now. I mean, look at that, nearly 500% increase. Absolutely phenomenal. So we've got a long way to go, guys. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you're doing with XDC in your exchanges wallet, so you get involved in the staking. Are you excited? But yeah, just any topics around XDC or any other tokens that you want us to mention or talk about, let us know in the comments below. We'll cover them for sure. But until the next video, take care, guys. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.